Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna devotees, so welcome to this study of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita. We're reading Madhya Lila, chapter number 19. And the title of the chapter is The Lord Instructs Srila Rupa Goswami. So today we'll go to nearly the end of this chapter and discuss the remaining topics of this chapter. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago in beginning this chapter has lots of philosophy, particularly the second half of this chapter. It is steeped in wonderful philosophy, and we know the setting here is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Rupa Goswami at Prayag about the science of devotional service. And this instruction went on for 10 days and 10 nights. And from this, Rupa Goswami went on to write exhaustively on the details of practicing devotional service. And one of the most known and important contributions in our practice of bhakti is the book that he wrote, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Srila Prabhupada presented as Nectar of Devotion. He called it the law book of bhakti. It gives us the precise way in how to practice devotional service. And so the essence of that book was revealed to Srila Rupa Goswami. So last week we talked about that the source of our knowledge and ability is Guru and Krishna. That if one is very sincere, then one is able to draw upon the mercy of both Guru and Krishna. One doesn't take any credit for their own doings, but when something great happens, they understand it is only by the wish of Guru and Krishna. So then we saw the important role that we have is to be sincere. And Srila Rupa Goswami was extraordinarily sincere in the practice of devotional service. 24 hours a day virtually engaged, sleeping maybe 1.5 hours maximum. So this is the context. Now, in last week's discussion, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to speak about the rarity of devotional service. How rare it is. There are trillions and trillions and trillions of living entities everywhere. And for one to come to the process of devotional service is the rarest of rare. And it is the greatest gift one can achieve. This Bhakti Lata Bij. This creeper of devotional service. It starts with the seed, a bija. And that seed is planted in the heart. And where that seed comes from? It comes from Guru Krishna Prasade. That by the mercy of Guru, one understands the devotional service to Krishna. And by the mercy of Krishna, hearing the living entity's desire to know about him and to practice devotional service, Krishna sends his external representative, the spiritual master, the Guru, into our lives. So one is internally inspired by Paramatma, by Krishna, and externally inspired by the spiritual master in the practice of devotional service. And so this Bhakti Lata Bij, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to explain how it must be watered like any plant. We must water it. And the primary processes of watering this devotional creeper, hearing and chanting. The more we hear, the more we chant. The more we can enhance the growth of our bhakti creeper. Sometimes we wonder, I don't feel like I'm making so much progress. So what's the watering agent? Hearing and chanting. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, be careful about making offenses. You have nourished this creeper. In an instant, it can get trampled by the mad elephant of Vaishnava pride. So be very mindful of that. Protect your creeper. Protect it with association. Stay in the association of devotees. And by staying in good association, one's bhakti creeper is protected. One must also remove weeds from the garden. The bhakti creeper, it's growing, but if you're pouring water and the weeds are consuming that water, then the creeper will left dry. So we must remove the unwanted plants and add and keep back the wanted. So we must remove the unwanted things from the heart, the anarthas. So in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained that this bhakti creeper, it grows and it grows and it grows. While it may grow for many years, it remains a vine, which means it's always very fragile. It doesn't grow thick like a tree. It remains a vine. So it must be protected and nourished throughout. Careful of offenses, constantly hearing and chanting, constantly in association. It is not as though one matures from such need. No, one remains in such a state of position. And if that creeper continues to be nourished and grows, it will pierce the material sky and enter the spiritual realm. And from there, it will continue growing through the Viraja river, through all the Vaikuntha planets, and enter Goloka Vrindavan. And that creeper will take shelter at the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. And when that bhakti is in its full mature state, that creeper is fully matured, then one fruit will come from that creeper. And that fruit is Krishna Prema, love of God. That is the perfection of bhakti. That is the goal of bhakti, to awaken our pure love for Krishna. And that is the fruit that is delivered from the Bhakti Lata Bij. And it all started by the mercy of Guru and the mercy of Krishna. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said he will now describe some of the symptoms of pure devotional service. This pure bhakti. So pure devotional service is the process by which this Krishna Prema, love of Krishna, is awakened. It is awakened by pure devotional service. So let us talk about pure devotional service. So we'll read verse 167 today. It's a very famous verse. It's the first verse that Srila Rupa Goswami presents in the Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, after offering his Mangalacharan. So the verse reads 167. Anyabilashita shunyam gyanakamari navatam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhakti ruttamam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. When first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruit of action. The devotee must serve Krishna favorably, as Krishna desires. Purport. This verse is also found in Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11. And as we can understand from Bhagavad Gita 934 and 1865, the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants everyone to think of Him always. Manmanabhava madbhakta. Everyone should become His devotee, not the devotee of a demigod. Everyone should engage in His devotional service, including archana, deity worship in the temple. Manmanabhava madbhakto majdimam namaskuru. Everyone should offer obeisances from moment to moment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are the desires of the Supreme Lord, and one who fulfills his desire favorably is actually a pure devotee. Krishna wants everyone to surrender unto Him, and devotional service means preaching this gospel all over the world. The Lord says openly in Bhagavad Gita 18:69, Na kaschin me priya kritama. One who preaches the gospel of the Bhagavad Gita for the benefit of all is most dear to Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Lord so that human society can be perfectly organized from all angles of vision, politically, socially, economically, philosophically, and religiously. From any point of view, human society can be reformed by Krishna conscious movement. Therefore, one who spreads this philosophy of Krishna consciousness for the benefit of all conditioned souls in the universe is perfect and pure devotional service. Now we get to the second paragraph. The criteria is that a devotee must know what Krishna wants him to do. This understanding can be achieved through the medium of a spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami advises Adau Guru Ashrayam. One who is serious in wanting to render pure devotional service to the Lord must take shelter of a spiritual master who comes in disciplic succession from Krishna. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshyo viduhu. Without accepting a bona fide spiritual master coming in disciplic succession, one cannot find out the real purpose of devotional service. Therefore, one has to accept the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and agree to be directed by him. The first business of a pure devotee is to satisfy his spiritual master, whose only business is to spread Krishna consciousness. And if one can satisfy the spiritual master, Krishna is automatically satisfied. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasada. This is the success of devotional service. This is the big meaning of the word anukulena. That is, favorable devotional service to the Lord. A pure devotee has no other plans than those of the Lord's service. He is not interested in attaining success in mundane activities. He simply wants success in the progress of devotional service. For a devotee, there cannot be worship of others or demigod worship. A pure devotee does not engage himself in pseudo-devotional service. He is interested only in satisfying Krishna. If he lives only for the satisfaction of Krishna, it does not matter whether he belongs to this order of life or that order of life. One's only business should be to satisfy Krishna. This process is completely manifest in the activities of Krishna conscious movement. It has been actually proved that the entire world can accept devotional service without failure. One has to simply follow the instructions of the representative of Krishna. Om Jnana Divinandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Samstapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupa Jatam Sagala Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijasaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Balalan Sagala Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanuste Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining the details of pure devotional service. So we said that the fruit of bhakti is Krishna prema. That is the ultimate goal, the ultimate of all achievements. And Krishna prema is awakened, achieved by the rendering of pure devotional service. So what is pure devotional service? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now explaining exactly what is pure devotional service. So in this very famous verse, we have two parts to the verse. There's the primary and the secondary characteristics of pure devotional service. So we'll take it in the order of which it's presented, but they're actually presented in the secondary characteristics are presented first and then the primary. But we'll take it in the way it's presented in the verse. So pure devotional service, we should understand it to be a very high platform of bhakti. And it's a platform of bhakti that is actually available in the potential for all of us, as we'll see in a couple of verses. So while it seems very lofty, we should know it's within our grasp if we want it. Based on our sincere desire and our humility, if we couple those two, this quality of devotional service is readily available. But we should understand it to be a very, very high platform. So this concept of pure devotional service. And pure bhakti is what is required to enter the spiritual world. And we'll see why in a moment. But this is the requisite to be able to practice pure devotional service. And Lord Krishna explains pure devotional service also in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 8, he refers as Ananya Bhakti. It means unmotivated, not mixed with anything, pure. Right? So, when we say, I have a lump of gold, it is pure definitionally if there is no other materials present within that lump of gold. Right? Then it is pure. We say it's unalloyed. An alloy is a mixture of metals. When we make gold earrings or a necklace, we take gold, but we mix it with other metals to we mix it with other metals in order to make it strong. Then it makes it a mix. But when we find pure, we remove all other types of metals. That's what makes it pure. So in bhakti, we have things that make it impure. And what are those things that contaminate or mix our bhakti? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying, when first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires. So when I'm practicing my bhakti with some material desires, it's now mixed. Well, what's pure? My only desire is to please Krishna. Right? Anukulyena Krishna Anushilana. So when my devotional service has the only goal, which is to please Krishna, then it is pure. But I must know what else can't be present, what else should not be present. So material desires. When I do devotional service for some material desires, and a material desire encompasses anything not related to Krishna's pleasure. Now, how many of our prayers standing in front of Shri Shri Radha Kunj Bihari represent pure devotional service? So we pray for so many different things. But this pure devotional service is anya vilashita shunyam. All shunyam, all desires gone. Then this knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, this impersonalness, this idea of merging into the Supreme Lord. One must be free from that desire. All the fruitive activities, performing religious activities for the purpose of some fruitive result, some fruitive gain. So that is what determines whether bhakti is pure or not. If it is free from these three things, material desires, this monistic philosophy, and fruitive desires, then it can be considered pure if, now we get to the second part of the verse, but the primary characteristics of pure bhakti. First, anukulyena means the devotion to Krishna must be favorable. When Krishna says, think of me, well, Kamsa is thinking of Krishna all the time. He was doing Vishnu Shmaranam. But his intent was not favorable. His intent was malicious or fearful. So that is not pure bhakti. Because it's not anukulyena. The intent must be to please Krishna. So our manmana, thinking of Krishna, becoming his devotee, offering homages, offering obeisances, it must be with a favorable intent. Then pure devotional service, as Srila Prabhupada comments in the first paragraph, it relates to Krishna. Krishna is the object of bhakti. No other personality. Now, in the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Prabhupada, explains who's included within Krishna. All of the different avatars, all of the different guru parampara are all contained within because they're all working in unison. But we understand that Krishna is the focus of bhakti. And it is anushilana. Anushilana means, it's got three parts to the meaning. It means that it is following in the footsteps. It is an activity. Bhakti is an activity. It is not a sentiment included within the activity. But bhakti is action. And three, it is a continuous action. It is not occasional. I do my bhakti in the morning and then the rest of my suffering. Then of course it's not anyabhyalashita shunyam as well. So anushilana means following in the footsteps of the previous devotees in practicing devotional service continuously. So if we put it all together, anukulyena Krishna anushilanam, it is a favorable service to Krishna, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas continuously. And it is free from any other motive. Even one's own self-preservation, one's own liberation, we'll see in a couple of verses, is not important. So now Srila Prabhupada makes a very important point when we say Anushilanam and we talk about Krishna, the role of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada opens the second paragraph. The criterion is that a devotee must know what Krishna wants him to do. If I'm going to serve Krishna exclusively, how do I know what he wants? How do I know what is anukulya? Does anybody know what pleases Krishna? How do we know what I'm doing is actually pleasing or not? So what is the means then to render this pure devotional service? I don't know Krishna, but I want to know him. So now what to do? So Srila Prabhupada explains that Rupa Goswami in the beginning of explaining how to do bhakti, he says, Adao Guru Ashrayam. One who seriously wants to render one who's serious in wanting to render pure devotional service to the Lord must take shelter of His Spirit. Why? And then Srila Prabhupada quotes a very important line from the Gurastaka, which says, Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado. Yasya prasada. By pleasing Guru, one pleases Krishna. Bhagavat. Krishna prasad. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasad. So by pleasing Guru, one automatically pleases Krishna. So yes, we may not have perfect understanding of how to please Krishna. But by being trained in the process of rendering service to Guru, we can automatically please Krishna. And that's why Srila Prabhupada says, the first business of a pure devotee. He says the first business is to satisfy his spiritual master, whose only activity is to please Krishna. So this is the definition of pure devotional service. And it is what we all are aspiring for. Because by practicing devotional service in this pure way, he does what happens? Let's read. In verse 169. These activities are called Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotional service. If one renders pure devotional service, he develops his original love for Krishna in due course of time. Right? So this Krishna prema, that fruit, it comes. How? By the rendering of pure devotional service. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes another very famous verse, Sarvopadi vinirmiktam tatparet vinanirmalam rishikesha rishikesha, sevanam bhakti ruchite. That, now I wanted to read this verse, it's very important. What is the meaning of bhakti? Bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So bhakti means to engage our senses in the service of Rishikesha, the master of all senses. That is the meaning of devotional service. So it is very practical. It is an activity. One engages all their senses in serving Krishna. And when one does, there are two side effects. One becomes free of all material designations, identification with the body, difficulties of the material world, all material desires. One becomes freed from all of those. And one's senses become purified. One begins to enjoy and experience the bliss of devotional service through one's senses. So, pure bhakti leads to Krishna prema. Pure bhakti is not mixed with any material desires. By rendering devotional service, one will become free of all the material designations. So we may wonder, wait a minute, how do I get rid of all my material desires? Well, one, we have to have that desire, that I want to be free of my material desires. How do I know that should be a desire? Now I know, because that's pure devotional service. So I want to be free of my material desires. We render devotional service. That is the side effect. So we may be in mixed bhakti today, but by rendering devotional service with this desire to come to the pure platform, it is one of the two side effects. So continue rendering devotional service. So in verse 173 now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, my devotees do not accept salokya, sarshti, sarupya, samipya, or even oneness with me if I offer these liberations in preference to serving me. Now, we see that the free of desires goes all the way up to the point of not even wanting freedom from birth, death, old age, and disease. No liberation. Now, how one can come to the point that they don't even want liberation? It can only come in one situation. It's like how one could come to the point where they see $1,000 laying on the street and they don't even bend over to pick it up. How one could come to that point? Only if they have so much money that $1,000 is insignificant. Now to us, it's impossible to even conceive that. But to a multi-billionaire walking down the street and seeing they might think, oh, I might throw out my back. It's not worth bending over. So only if one has something so extraordinary, more, then that becomes insignificant. Now, $1,000 is not insignificant. But relative to somebody who has billions of dollars, it's insignificant. So when one has experienced the bliss of pure devotional service, it's so extraordinarily pleasing. The happiness is so intense and so unlimited that liberation feels very insignificant. It's not insignificant, but from that perspective, it feels very small, not even registering, because their bliss is so much higher. Like that $1,000 doesn't even register. Rupa Goswami says, Moksha Labruta Krit. When one is experiencing Bhava Bhakti, this ecstatic bhakti, one doesn't even consider liberation. Why? Because they're experiencing a transcendental bliss so far beyond even that, it doesn't even cross their consciousness. But that's the power of pure devotional service. How sweet it is that even going to live on the Vaikuntha planets with Krishna in this form of Narayan seems very insignificant. Now that's difficult to conceive. But just like the billionaire walking past $1,000, we can imagine that. That's the happiness. Now, how many of us want to experience pure devotional service? It's beyond our calculation of bliss. It's explained that if you took all of the happiness of the whole material world and you condensed it, it would amount to water in the hoof print of a calf. And if you took all the bliss of bhakti, it would be like an unlimited ocean of water. That is a relative comparison. Water in a hoof print of a calf versus a giant ocean. All of that's available by devotional service. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then says that there are some things that block one's taste of this incalculable bliss. The Sandhanana Visheshatma. This is like this intense, incalculable bliss. And so in 176, he explains, the material desire to enjoy the material world and the desire to become liberated from material bondage are considered to be two witches, and they haunt one like ghosts. As long as these witches remain within the heart, how can one feel transcendental bliss? As long as these two witches remain in the heart, there's no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service. So this incalculable happy bliss of devotional service, we must remove two things, bhukti and mukti. These are two obstacles in the practice of devotional service. Material desires or liberation desires. They impede the taste of bhakti. Just as if you have a nice pot of sweet rice and then you put some garam masala in it. That garam masala, though small in quantity, it disturbs the taste of the whole sweet rice. Or you put 1 teaspoon of sand in a bowl of sweet rice. Whole thing is ruined. So similarly, when we have the presence of these material desires or the desire for liberation, one's ability to taste pure devotional service is ruined. Now Rupa Goswami says, but if you are filled with material desires, it is okay. You continue practicing bhakti. And you can become free from those by the continued practice of devotional service. The desire for mukti is more problematic, particularly the impersonal liberation, the one desire to merge with the Supreme. So, most at least are afflicted with the bhukti. So thankfully Rupa Goswami has said, that obstacle we can overcome. And how we overcome it? Sauvarupadi vinirmiktam taparvetna nirmalam rishikena rishikesha. Serving the Supreme Lord will become free from all these material designations. So this is the impediment to tasting this incalculable bliss. So much bliss that even liberation feels insignificant. Right? So now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then explains. You see, he's giving nice sequence here. How he's explaining this, step by step. Then he says in 177, how to practice pure devotional service. What's the key? By regularly rendering devotional service, one gradually becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When that attachment is intensified, it becomes love of God. What is love? Attachment, intense attachment. I can't live without. Now, this I can't live without Krishna, that concept might seem difficult. But no, that is actually our original constitutional position. We are so attached to Krishna. He is our loving Supreme Father. In so many wonderful relationships, we'll talk about the relationships in a minute. But that intense attachment is love for Krishna, where there's no other desire but to please Him. And how it comes about? By rendering regular devotional service. Srila Prabhupada comments in the purport that the process of devotional service beginning with chanting and hearing is called sadhana bhakti. So this chanting and hearing, we heard this before, the watering process for our bhakti lata bij. This is the sadhana that matures us from mixed devotional service to pure devotional service. By good chanting and good hearing, we can elevate to the platform of pure devotional service. And from there, one can experience the ultimate of all, and that is intense attachment, love of God. And Prabhupada says, Prakutam riddhi sadyate. This love of Krishna is lying dormant within our heart. We don't have to go find it anywhere else. It is lying dormant within our heart. So no need to go searching for it here and there. Simply desire for it to be awakened. And how we can awaken it? By the guidance of the spiritual master, who guides us in the practice of pure devotional service so that we may please Krishna. Okay. Now, let's discuss. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then continues to discuss. He talks about this concept of awe and reverence. So he compares the two. This is text 192. Attachment for Krishna is divided into two categories. Again, this intense attachment is indicating love for Krishna. There are two categories of love for Krishna. There are two categories of pure devotional service. One is attachment with awe and reverence, and the other is pure attachment without reverence. And then he explains in 193 a further distinction. Pure attachment without reverence is found in Goloka Vrindavan. Oh, sorry, he says Gokula Vrindavan. Same thing. Attachment which, with awe and reverence, are prominent, is found in two cities, Mathura and Dwarka, and in Vaikuntha. So this pure love, it exists in two varieties. With awe and reverence, and without. Without awe and reverence is in Goloka Vrindavan. With awe and reverence are in the Vaikuntha planets and in Mathura and Dwarka. So we may ask the question, well, which one is more intense? What are the two characteristics? Well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knows our question and answers in 194. What does he say? When opulence is very prominent, love of Godhead is somewhat crippled. According to Kevala devotion, however, even though the devotee sees the unlimited potency of Krishna, he considers himself equal to him. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining that this love of Godhead, it is somewhat crippled by this notion of awe and reverence. And then in 195, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains now these different rasas. But I'll come back to these rasas in a moment. So this awe and reverence is when one is inspired by the greatness of Krishna. And we're bowing to his very effulgent, beautiful, powerful, strong form. That we see present, that mood of bhakti, it's pure bhakti, it's unalloyed. We see that mood in Vaikuntha, where Krishna is present in his Narayan form. That pure love without awe and reverence is present only in Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna himself is personally present in his original two-armed form. So now, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does, he compares and contrasts in the different rasas, the devotees in the mood of each, awe and reverence, and not. So I just picked three of them to discuss. But he takes each one. So in verse 197, he compares the mood of Devaki and Vasudevji with Mother Yashoda. Now when we compare, we have to be very mindful. It is like comparing a billionaire with a multi-billionaire. These are extraordinary devotees. So let's not let not our consciousness kind of gravitate to this, higher lower concept. We should understand great and greater. Okay? Very important. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving parallels to illustrate the difference in mood of bhakti when there is awe and reverence and when there is not awe and reverence. When Devaki and Vasudeva understood that their two sons, Krishna and Balaram, who had paid obeisances to them, were the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they became fearful and did not embrace them. So Devaki and Vasudeva were awed by Krishna and Balaram being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they did not embrace. Okay? Now we compare that to the mood of Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda saw the whole universe within the mouth of Krishna after he had eaten some dirt. So she knew he is the source of all Brahmanda. He is the source of everything. She saw the entire universe including all the rishis and devatas worshipping him, everything she saw. Yet, when it came time to show her motherly love, she's chasing him in the courtyard with a stick to bind him to the grinding mortar. One would not embrace, but Mother Yashoda, her love went to the point of even binding Krishna. So when there is not awe and reverence, one comes to this platform of very intimate service. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains and gives the comparison between Rukmini Devi and the gopis. So Rukmini said that although Krishna was joking with Queen Rukmini, she was thinking that he was going to give up her company, and she was therefore shocked. And actually, there's a beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes next. She fainted. Just gave a hint that she should not have married him. She fell down like a giant banana tree knocked down by the wind. Fainted. Mood of service was awe and reverence. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compares in verse 2:10 the mood of the gopis and how they serve Krishna. No awe and reverence. They call Krishna a cheater. Kitava, you are a cheater. You have called us here in the middle of the night with your transcendental flute, and now you have gone away. Or you are telling us we should not be here. So, the gopis of Vrindavan, they rebuke Krishna. Now, we must understand that when they do so, it is always in the mood to please Krishna. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in verse 203 gives this very critical understanding. This concept is very high, and we have to understand it in the right mood. How one can rebuke Krishna. How one can try to bind Krishna. Right? These seem, now one thinking they are superior to Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives very beautiful verses. He gives two verses. I'll read one of them. Verse 203 explains what is the mindset of this pure devotee. In the stage of Kevala, this unalloyed devotion, this bhakti without any awe and reverence, a devotee does not consider the unlimited opulence of Krishna, even though he experiences it. He takes seriously only his relationship with Krishna. So the point here is, one never forgets that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in his relationship with Krishna, he doesn't let it get in the way. Why? Because that's what pleases Krishna most. What the intensity of love Krishna experiences in Goloka Vrindavan, when the gopis are rebuking him. Why they rebuke him? Because it intensifies Krishna's pleasure. When Mother Yashoda is chasing Krishna with a stick, he is sincerely wanting to experience that motherly love. But how can the Anadir Adir Govinda, who is the cause of everything, Sarva Karana Karanam, how he can experience love of a mother? Well, his pure devotee is able to give him that rasa by binding him even. She is not doing to show her own strength, but simply to give Krishna that type of pleasure. Even the cowherd boys, they make Krishna carry him on his shoulders home to please Krishna. So what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining here is, the devotee, they know Krishna is the Supreme Lord. But then by the potency of Yoga Maya, they forget in their relationship and their dealings with Krishna. So Prabhupada writes in this purport, I want to read, when a devotee reaches a stage of pure unalloyed devotion, especially in friendship with Krishna, he forgets the Lord's opulences. Although he sees them, he considers himself equal to Krishna. Please hear this statement. There is no question of actually comparing oneself to Krishna. But because the devotee is so advanced in Krishna consciousness, he is able to behave with Krishna as he would with an ordinary man. So we cannot try to imitate this. This is a very advanced stage of bhakti. But this is the bhakti that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted Rupa Goswami to explain to all of us. Why? So that we can embed deeply into our heart and top of consciousness to have the desire to render this type of pure devotional service without any awe and reverence, to intensify the pleasure for Krishna. And thus he is explaining this in very detailed way. So now, just conclude quickly. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then, in the remainder of this section, and basically the remainder of this chapter, explains the 5 rasas, or relationships one has with Krishna in pure devotional service. And there are 5 of them. I encourage everyone to read the purport to verse 228, 228. Madhya Lila, chapter 19, verse 228. I was going to read it, but in the interest of time, I'll just summarize it very briefly. But it gives a nice synopsis of these 5 rasas and how they all build upon each other. So the 5 rasas are Santa, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. Means service in neutrality, service as a servant, service as a friend, service as a parental, and service as a conjugal lover. So 5 rasas. Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. So in Shanta rasa, this is the service of neutrality. There is great attachment to Krishna and detachment to all material desires, right? We know that is the baseline for pure bhakti. No attachments to material desires and full attachment to Krishna. So that is there. And one renders service in a neutral position because there is still an attraction to this impersonal understanding of Krishna. When one goes from understanding I am servant of Krishna, which is present in Shanta rasa, and then one goes to render service actively, that comes to the platform of Dasya rasa. So Dasya rasa, it includes both Shanta rasa and Dasya rasa. So both are included, both moves. So when we add active service in knowledge of Krishna, this is still in the mood of awe and reverence, right? The servant is in awe and reverence. Now, we see this relationship prominent in Vaikuntha. We don't see it very prominent in Goloka Vrindavan. Because there, the service to Krishna is not in this mood, but it comes in the mood starting with the next rasa, the 3rd, which is Sakya rasa. So when there's a confidence of fraternity, what it means is there's a comfort in friendship with Krishna. There's an expression of, Krishna, you and I are equal. They're not equal. The devotee understands that. But the relationship is expressed in such a way. Again, why? For the pleasure of Krishna. Because Krishna wants to enjoy with his friends. If he's the Supreme Lord and everybody just lets him win because they want to render service to him, there's no enjoyment in the games they play in the forests. So sometimes the friends of Krishna, they win, they beat Krishna in the game. And Krishna has to carry Sridham back to home on his shoulders. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives that example. So, in Sakya Rasa, there is the attachment and detachment we saw in Shanta Rasa. There is the mood of servitorship in Dasya Rasa. But it adds this concept of confident friendship. So all 3 are present in Sankhya. So as you go from one rasa to the next, it includes the aspects of the prior rasas. So they're building upon each other. When that mood of friendship, then you add this mood of service in maintaining Krishna. Not an equal, but from a point of maintaining Krishna. That is Vatsalya Rasa. That is like Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj. Right? They are how you can become the mother and father of Krishna. Well, one can give Krishna that type of pleasure by having the mood that, I have to protect Krishna, make sure he doesn't get hurt, make sure he eats, make sure he bathes. Right? So this mood of maintenance is added. It comes to Vatsalya Rasa. And finally, when all these four rasas combine and they increase in intensity, this fraternity, this maintenance, this service, it increases, intensifies. And one offers their full selves, their full body in the service of Krishna. That is Madhurya Rasa. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has explained previously, as we heard in the conversations between Ramananda Rai and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is the most intense rasa of love between Krishna and his devotee. The most intense. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming in the mood of a Madhurya Rasa devotee. The utmost of all Madhurya Rasa devotees, Srimati Radharani. And he is teaching us this mood of bhakti. And specifically this mood of bhakti in Vipralamba, in separation. As we saw at Imlitala. So this is the mood. So just to summarize, pure devotional service is the process by one awakens this fruit of Krishna prema, this intense love of Krishna service. And pure devotional service is favorably performed for Krishna, following in the footsteps of the prior acharyas. And by serving Guru, one serves Krishna. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado. And when one does, this intensity of attachment develops. And that intensity of attachment becomes free of even awe and reverence. The highest of all, the most intense of all love. Again, in comparing, we don't compare lesser and greater. We think great and even supreme. These are all on a platform of extraordinary high platforms. So don't fall into the trap of thinking, this is just a lesser. This is far, far beyond where, at least speaking for myself, where I am today. But the goal of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explaining this very detailed and somewhat technical aspect is to inspire within our heart the desire to achieve pure devotional service, to awaken our pure love of Godhead, and serve Krishna without awe and reverence, in pure unadulterated love in Goloka Vrindavan. So that is the instructions. Now Rupa Goswami will go to Vrindavan and begin writing all of these, and we can study them to our heart's content. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss with all of you this Chaitanya Caritamrita. Any discussion, questions, comments, corrections? Okay. We have one online.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. How a neophyte devotee gets a bona fide spiritual masters association? Is it due to practicing devotional service in a selfless manner for several years? Or, I heard in some lecture that a devotee practicing devotional service, taking bath in Ganges, gets away his past sins, then Lord paves the way to see and associate with bona fide spiritual master. Please clarify, Prabhu.
Who is asking?
Mother and Guru.
Hare Krishna. So, very wonderful question. How one gets the fortune of a spiritual master. So, Krishna sees the desire in the heart of the devotee. So, Srila Prabhupada commented in a purport in last week's section we discussed that when Krishna sees the desire of the devotee to become sincere in devotional service, he then sends the spiritual master into our life. We actually don't have to even go looking. Krishna brings the Guru into our life. Now we may wonder how it happened, why? Deep down there's some desire in our heart to render devotional service. And in understanding, I am not qualified to understand how to render this type of devotional service, nor I have any qualification even to accept a spiritual master. But Guru then comes. Krishna says, the Guru is my external representative. He is sitting in our heart. Krishna is sitting in our heart as Chaitya Guru. And he externally represents himself as the bona fide spiritual master. And so that comes not by necessarily becoming free of our sins and bathing in the Ganges or performing any other types of prayaschita or purification practices. It comes when there is a desire in the heart. And then the spiritual master comes into our life. We don't even have to go searching, but we just have to desire. And that is how it happens. And it is the greatest of all fortunes. It is like you are swimming in an ocean. Let's make it more maybe plausible. You are stranded on an island in the middle of the ocean and you cannot get off. And then one day a ship comes by. How happy you would be to get aboard that ship. After months and months, years and years, lifetimes after lifetimes, struggling on this island all by yourself, not able to get out. Now, the ship has come. That ship is the spiritual master, who is prepared to take us across the ocean of material existence and take us back home to Godhead in rendering pure devotional service. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So today in detail we talked about devotional service. So what I would like to understand from this is how will it bring the happiness into the devotional service? So I mean to say that when we do something, right, so it should make you happy, then you gradually increase it, right?
Yes.
That's the way general people do it, right? So how we will bring that beginning of that happiness and then gradually increasing it?
Yeah, it's a great question because the inspiration to do devotional service often initially is to become free from some of the difficulties we have, right? To bring some positive improvement in our life. So therein lies some personal motive, right? And that's natural. But as one begins to practice devotional service, even in that mood, Krishna says in the 7th chapter that one who does service to me, who is in distress, who is in need of money, who is wise or curious, they are still very pious. He calls them great souls. Because soon, by continuing to practice bhakti, they'll purify those desires. So what happens is we begin to practice devotional service and we get the experience of some happiness. We find, wow, I have less stress, I'm less angry, I have more peace of mind, I'm enjoying, I used to enjoy cricket and now I'm enjoying dancing and kirtan. I used to enjoy this, now I enjoy, cooking for Krishna. Pleasure. And that motivates, that inspires one to do more, right? And when one does more bhakti, they experience more happiness. And that experience, but as one progresses, there's a transition one realizes that when one begins to render service to Krishna without any desire in return, actually the happiness they get is even more. So the less we desire our own happiness, the actual more we get. And it's very logical. When a child renders service to mother, when child helps mother put away the dishes because a child wants ice cream, well, that type of service is pleasing to mother. But if child renders service to mother without any desire, now how much love the mother showers back on child? Even more. So Krishna, yes, when we're motivated, he'll still shower mercy and love. But as we progress and understand, the more free we become from even those desires, the more love and happiness one is showered. And so when Rupa Goswami is explaining the 3 stages of bhakti, in each stage there is an aspect of intense happiness. In sadhana bhakti, we say, I'm drawing a kleshagni. One becomes free from all the material desires. And subhadha, one experiences all auspiciousness, some happiness. Then in the second stage, there is moksha lagutrakrit. The experience is so happy that even moksha seems insignificant. And in prema bhakti, sandhanana visheshatma, there's so intense happiness. So initially, it is the catalyst. And as we progress with knowledge, we realize the less we desire and just rely on Krishna, just render service, one experiences that bliss. And that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the 2 witches, bhukti and mukti, what does it do? It prevents one from tasting that full bliss of bhakti. So there is happiness all along. But the less we want it, and the more we just want the pleasure of Krishna, actually the more we enjoy. Just as any relationship, that's pure love.
Thank you, Babu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Tanapradam, Prabhuji, all this, Srila Prabhupada, very nice class, Prabhuji. One question was, during that time, we talked about different kind of rasas. So we had the Shant rasa when we talked about. Actually, I was always under the impression that when we are moment we talk about the spiritual world, this concept of impersonal Brahman realization is not there in the spiritual world. But when we talked about the Shantarasa, more of a merging with the Brahman kind of a relationship there, and then because it's more of an inactive devotional service, then you talked about an active form, which turns into active form as we progress higher into Sakya Rasana. So maybe my understanding is not clear, but all the while I was thinking that this concept of impersonality was not a part of the spiritual world, but now with Shantarasa, it seems to be different.
Yeah, so let's clarify. Go back several sessions ago when we spoke about Mayavadi philosophy, and we spoke so extensively about impersonal philosophy. We said that the dangerous impersonal philosophy is when one denies the existence of Krishna and only accepts the impersonal form to facilitate their desire to become one with God. That is the impersonal philosophy that we speak so protectively against to avoid at all costs. But in the spiritual world, there is an impersonal presence, the light. The whole of the spiritual world is illuminated not by the sun. What is illuminated by? Krishna's Brahma Jyotir. So there is impersonal presence in the spiritual world. But one doesn't deny the personal form of the Lord. Because as soon as you deny the personal form of the Lord, you're saying you and I are limited. Right? So it's an offensive approach. So here in Shantarasa, one is attracted to and engaged in this mood of service. But it's not of the offensive type. But if you see, when we speak about, in Goloka Vrindavan, the rasas, the primary rasas we see are Sakya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, and Madhurya rasa. We don't see this Shanta rasa or Dasya rasa. They're there, but they're not prominent. So this Shanta rasa is not offensive in one bit. It is within the realm of pure devotional service. And therefore, you'll see in other parts of Chaitanya Caritamrita, Krishna Kaviraj Goswami, when he speaks about the rasas, he actually doesn't even include Shanta rasa. But it's still an aspect. And Lord Balaramji, he serves as Shanta rasa by being all of Krishna's paraphernalia. So it is an aspect of pure devotional service. The impersonal attraction is not of the offensive type, because it's not denying the presence of Krishna. So that's the difference there. And remember, there is an impersonal feature in the spiritual world. Otherwise, the spiritual world will be incomplete. It has to have both, personal and impersonal. Is that okay?
So it's basically the state of consciousness. There in the Mayavadis, the fact that they do it with that offensive attitude. Here, this concept is the same, similar, which you're talking about Shantaras, but then it's not offensive. It's more of acknowledgement also that there is the Supreme, who has a personal form, but they are more inclined towards worshipping the impersonal form at that point in time.
Yeah, their desire is to serve in this, and that's why it's in a stage of neutrality, right? So they use the word neutrality. Srila Prabhupada translates the word as neutrality. Neutrality is a difficult concept to have with pure devotional service.
Another question I had was like in page 391. I think we talked about. I mean, actually, it is a brief mention there, but I'm just curious to know the answer for that. It's 207 to 209 text when it talks about the pastime of Krishna and Radharani. So why does Radharani and Krishna actually disappear when Radharani is taken away by Krishna? From the Rasina, Radharani goes, right? Then again, why does Krishna disappear? That I'm not able to understand. Why does that happen?
Why does Krishna?
She becomes a little proud of. Yeah, she becomes a little proud of herself. It's written there, and then Krishna finally disappears. So, wondering.
It's that's a little bit more of an involved discussion. But if we read in Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada comments about this idea that how Radharani she's not really becoming proud. Otherwise, that's obviously an impurity. But it's again part of the whole rasa. So part of this relationship of catch me, catch you, and that that back and forth. It's what intensifies the love for Krishna. So when Radharani runs away, she's not running away out of her own false ego. She is running away to intensify Krishna's feelings. When she begs Krishna to, be with her, not because she wants to be with him, but because that mood, again, is most pleasing for Krishna. So these things, these back and forth that take place, they're on a very high level for us to try to understand. What we understand in all cases, every activity is centered around increasing the pleasure for Krishna. And Krishna is increasing the pleasure for his devotees. So that's always the answer for why. And then there's always, maybe some more details given, but just, for time being, we'll take it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, because sometimes it's really bewildering when you're reading those things.
Yeah.
That why is it happening even with the gopis doing this? So now, understanding that everything they do is for the pleasure of Krishna. So if we see from that perspective, then everything falls in place.
And that's why these topics are very we have to approach them very carefully. Because what we do is we see them from our own eyes, and we start to see, we just can't contemplate it, we can't understand it. So just keep going back to Krishna does everything for the pleasure of his devotees do everything for the pleasure of Krishna. That's it. And then it becomes, there might be layers you can peel back from there, but that's the main layer. And because anything feels awkward or weird or different, understand it's because my glasses are cloudy. The picture is clear, but my vision is blurred. And that's natural, right? We have our own lens from which we are looking at these things. Like so many of Krishna's activities. So how he could kidnap Rukmini. You could draw conclusions from that. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much for all your lovely classes on Chaitanya. It's really been a wonderful adventure, learning experience for all of us.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guruji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Minu Razdan
Yes.
from the online is asking, Hare Krishna, how can we serve Krishna while living in our own house?
Oh, very nice question. So we serve Krishna while living in our own house. So, we serve Krishna very practically. When we cook for our family, we first cook. So whatever foodstuffs that are offerable, that we understand, so we learn and we cook for Krishna. We make our home a temple, not by necessarily making it a temple in the sense of, we put a flag on the roof and but in a consciousness that we make that this is the Lord's home. And so we make a nice place for him in our home. And we understand that we are his servants in his home. When we do work around the house, that means we are working in Krishna's house. If we're going to the office, we are going to earn for Krishna. If we are raising our children, we are raising our children to become Krishna conscious. So every activity becomes spiritual life. And that is the beauty of how Krishna has designed Krishna consciousness. That it's available to everyone and anyone in all walks of life. So that is how we can do so. Okay. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, I have a question.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
What is, how do you know what is the best devotional service for you? Or
Yeah.
everything ultimately in the service of Krishna?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do we know what's best for us? And so that is where, again, and you might notice in this section, the last 2 weeks of all the purports, how much Srila Prabhupada is speaking about the importance of Guru in our life. Over and over and over again in these purports, we're seeing it. Because in applying this process of nurturing the Bhakti Lata Bij and making progress in devotional service, the spiritual master is very important in guiding us in, what devotional service is best for us. And, the Guru guides us through the spiritual medium. And so daily in chanting, and we can interact with the spiritual master and ask how and what we should do. And then we take some guidance from those who are maybe helping us in the process of devotional service to understand. But at the end of the day, Srila Prabhupada made it real simple. Chanting and hearing, good association and some service. That is the core. And then there may be some other things that we enjoy doing in devotional service we can do, but really, really good chanting, reading and hearing. Reading Srila Prabhupada's books and hearing are one and the same. And rendering some practical service. That is the core of what we need to do. Everything else is kind of icing on the cake. if you will. So that needs to be the the really core of our devotional service. So, is that okay?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.